Eye on Education, I'm Fred Martino. Coming up, a look at the importance of early childhood education, and we'll hear about the program for that discipline at John A. Logan College. But first, learning and culture for everyone at a Carbondale institution that highlights how old theaters can be reinvented nationwide. Here's Anna Toomey from the SIU Alumni Association.
People came for the movie premieres, the arcade games, family nights. The list goes on and on. Varsity Theater has welcomed Salukis and the people of Carbondale for more than 80 years.
We have people come in and tell us stories about their first dates and come back for their anniversaries. That's really cool.
Well, for me, the Varsity I have a long memory of it. As a child in the 60s, our folks would take us there. We didn't have a TV, we didn't have air conditioning, so we often went in the summer just to cool off, and the films didn't cost all that much. They were always first-run films.
The nostalgia hits hard as soon as you enter the lobby.
Hi, I'm Billy Robbins, and welcome to the Varsity. I have the pleasure of serving on the board and currently the president and chair of the board here at the Varsity.
Billy Robbins and Eric Jones both have a passion for Varsity Theater history.
I like local history, especially Carbondale history. I'm always interested in knowing what used to be somewhere.
Our tour starts at the ticket desk in the Varsity Theater lobby.
The Varsity opened in June of 1940 as a Rogers movie theater with our, what we affectionately term our big room theater and the connected balcony. That was all one theater. The theater was built in the Art Moderne style, very close to Art Deco, but in 1940.
One of the most fascinating aspects of Varsity Theater are these lights in the front lobby. They're original from the 1940s and were built by a St. Louis-based company who imported glass tubes from Switzerland.
The 1940 Varsity grand opening had a large advertisement in local newspapers.
When the Varsity was new, the sides were all covered in plate glass, so all this stonework was not here. The bricks, the yellow brick on the far side was there, but all the part facing Illinois Avenue was all the shiny glass. That included up the part where the Varsity sign is.
According to records kept by local historian Dee Dee Lingle-Ittner, the first theater in the Varsity, the Big Room, opened with more than 1,000 seats in a two-tiered auditorium. The first movie shown was the film adaptation of Our Town.
It was a big hit at the time and had been made after a Broadway play that was famous in 1938.
The Big Room would later be renovated in the 70s and 80s to help the Varsity stay competitive.
In the late 70s, it divided into two screens. So the balcony was closed off to become a second screen, which was to try and keep up with multiplexes.
Billy says the Varsity is the epitome of adaptation, from increasing the number of movie screens to making the space usable for live music and theater. The Varsity has also survived a fire and a time period when it was left completely unused.
Well, come on with me over here. We'll go into the East Theater. This is the first space that was developed in the complex for broad use, for the most use, and this is the home of our resident theater, the Stage Company, the Jackson County Stage Company. This was the third movie theater that was developed after the fire.
The Varsity caught fire in 1981 during renovations to add a third screen. The fire tore apart the Big Room as well as the stores that were attached to Varsity at the time.
We're standing in the area of what was a dress shop and I think a menswear store, and those were lost in the fire in 82. So, here at the Varsity, we try to make the best with what we have a lot of the times. In all three of our spaces here at the venue, you'll see our vintage 1982 seating. It's great because it's here.
Behind the curtains of the East Theater, you'll find the ghost lights.
As far as hauntings are concerned, even though the Varsity has been around for over 80 years, none of us have ever had any ghost experience. It's probably because of the ghost lights. In theater tradition, We leave these blue lights on here at the doors, and ours are presently at the doors of our shop here in the backstage, to keep the ghosts calm and give them something. I guess keep them company, give them space or light to see where they're going.
Further behind the screen is a shop where crews can do most of their set building.
It serves as a backstage space for us as well, and kind of a buffer between our green rooms and dressing rooms. All of our artists, whether they're performing in a play or musical guests, to drag performers, whoever, we have dressing rooms and green room space down here that they all can use and enjoy. So
next, we head up to the balcony, an extremely popular area of the Varsity and one with a long and varied history.
So this is the balcony space here at the venue. This is one of our favorite spaces. This is our most recently renovated area. When I say renovated, I'm not saying restored. This is not as it was in the original. This staging and our film screens were all brought in really recently, within the last 4 or 5 years.
Many of the changes made to the balcony area were done by volunteers right here in Carbondale who believe deeply in the Varsity's mission. Billy says the projection room is an original from 1940, something that makes this viewing area especially unique.
One of the things I say, and people hear me say it all the time, is that saving the Varsity is something that goes on every single day.
Billy says the balcony area was front and center during the Carbondale civil rights movement.
If there is a haunting or a ghost story, it's this space right here. You see, from 1940 until the mid-50s, the Varsity was segregated. This is where non-whites were relegated to come view a movie. Track star and then comedian Dick Gregory was invited to play this stage in the big room, in the theater. And he refused to, as long as this space stayed segregated. You know, one of the things that we do at the Varsity is try to create a safe, accessible space for people all across the community from any background.
We move on to a rarely seen part of Varsity Theater that comes with a view of the Carbondale Strip.
So this is the original manager's office. On the front of the theater, on the top of the marquee, is our tower, and then our tower sign, which we refer to a lot. So the glass block where you see Varsity on the south-facing and the north-facing sides of the sign. A couple of years ago, about 4 years ago, this was only turned on if we were kind of in residence, sort of like when the king, well, the king now is in the palace, the flag's up. But one of the efforts that I said is, let's turn the tower on all the time. Kind of a little small thing. But having that on all the time, I couldn't get over the nostalgia that it would hit when I would come into town from the South End and see the light from the theater tower in the evening. And it was really impactful. And we
venture up one more level to the attic.
We'll try not to kill ourselves and do this.
We climb up to a window many might recognize from the outside.
So one of the vantage points that just some of the few get to see is the medallions on the tower they are windows. But great place to see Lights Fantastic Parade that we just had. Watch the trains come in as well. 80
years after it was built, the Varsity Theater still has so much history intact. The different styles and coloring of everything from bathrooms to the theater seats paint a picture of each decade the theater has survived. But what came before Varsity?
So I've done some looking into what was on this site in the past. And I look around, and at the corner where it says Varsity Gallery, In my day, that was Varsity Arcade, I think, and before that it was Varsity Grill, and before that it was Varsity Drugs, which was part of the original Varsity Complex.
Eric Jones dug deeper using census records from 1910 and discovered that the entire Varsity complex used to be a residential area.
There was a new boarding house built on that corner in about 1908, a big wooden house with a porch that wrapped all the way around, and it was owned by a black family who kept school teachers at what is now the Attucks School. It was still the old East Side School at that time.
In later years, this residential area would not only be home to Varsity Theater, but several small storefronts.
Right here on this side is the original wall of the little stores that used to be where all this block wall is. And at the very top, you can see where the brick changes to block, and that marked the actual height of the original little stores. There were 4 stores here. Each one was 25 feet of frontage on Illinois Avenue and then 40 feet deep. So those became a new movie theater inside once after the fire of 1981.
Varsity Theater has been owned and operated by different people under different names over the years. The Rogers Theater Circuit owned the Varsity until the 1960s, then sold it to the Carasotes, who owned it for more than 40 years. They shut it down in 2003 after the Showplace 8 movie theater opened in Carbondale. Competition was too fierce. Then in 2008, the Carasotes donated the theater to the stage company, who transformed the Varsity into a place for live music and theater.
In 2015, they added this electronic marquee to update it a little bit, and I believe the sign was redone at that time in the foyer as well.
Billy says the future of Varsity Theater involves a lot of fundraising and a focus on upgrades to the big room.
You know, we have our third space, the big room right now that's really raw, that is the target of our next big effort to redevelop, much like the East was in the early 2000s and the balcony was in about 2015. Right now, we want to focus on making the Varsity, the full Varsity, all of our spaces in the venue to be accessible and usable 365.
Billy likes to say the work on Varsity never stops. The exterior may change and the interior may change, but its foundation of memories always stays the same.
People talk about the movies they saw here. I saw Empire Strikes Back here. You know, my dad and I definitely, we were movie buffs, and we would come here to the Varsity often because you could come by at any time and there was some show playing on one of the 3 screens.
We learned so much from our arts organizations thanks to Anna Toomey from the SIU Alumni Association for that report. Well, now we move to a vital topic in learning. Dr. Marilyn Toliver is a professor and advisor for the Early Childhood Education program at John A. Logan College, and I am pleased to welcome her to Eye on Education. Marilyn, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
It is great to have you here with us. And I do want to start with the overall importance of early childhood education for student success. A lot of people have been probably hearing about this and the research that's coming in all the time to tell us this is critical.
I certainly agree with that. It is very critical. And I would go as far as to say not just for school success, but the early years actually lay the foundation for lifelong success. And just highlighting the brain development research and how important it is for children to get loving, nurturing cares early on. So that is so essential for the healthy brain development. It lays the foundation for healthy social and emotional development, mental health. And so we can't miss out on that opportunity. Yes, we're going to teach them the 1, 2, 3s and the ABCs and how to write their name and all the rest. But really, the love, the security, the physical and healthy growth and development, particularly the brain. So we're talking about the whole child.
Yeah. I'm glad you framed it that way because it's something I often think about, and it's a point of pride working in public broadcasting, because when I think about my early years and first experience outside of school to good influences, the first thing I think about is Mr. Rogers. And you learn about not just things that are related to academics, but as you say, your development as a person, and a good person in that case. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah.
So, as you know, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has a goal to bring a universal pre-K system to Illinois. How do you see that idea, that proposal?
I really do support that idea, actually, because early education is so important. And it's not that they couldn't get a healthy start at home, but with all of the two-parent families working and all of the stress, and it's just so many distractions. And some parents may not really be aware of how important little things are. Reading a bedtime story, playing with the child. I mean, they're doing a good job. They're keeping them fed and clothed, and, you know, they're doing what they can. But I think that right now, kindergarten is a place that you really need to be prepared for. It's no longer just getting away from mom and dad for a little while, getting transition to be away from home. They already know their numbers, their ABCs, how to write their name. They know a lot of concepts and skills that teachers are deliberate about teaching them early on. So, and then the social and emotional development and the peer interaction. You can't get that really at home. So I think that children who don't have any kind of group care experience or any kind of early education, I'm sorry to say, yes, they're going to be behind before they even start.
Yeah.
With
I was
public
thinking,
education.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was thinking about the peer interaction element of this, because I was in a doctor's office the other day and noticed, very different from when you and I were little kids, there were little kids there with their parents, and they weren't interacting with each other. They were on devices.
Yes.
Very little kids. And I thought, wow, this means that time where they are able to interact with others is really precious, maybe much more important than it was in the past even.
Yeah, the blooming technology advancements have really made us rethink a lot of things. But you know, nothing really takes the place of personal interactions when you're taking care of babies and infants and toddlers and preschoolers. I mean, you really do need that hands-on, personal, one-on-one interaction. However, you know, there is a place for educational programming.
Yeah.
And that is a way for children to learn. But in early education, we're limiting screen time. We are making it more educational. It cannot take the place of outdoor play. It cannot take the place of the rumble and tumble. And it can't take the place of that personal interaction and group experience. But yeah, we are working with technology.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And trying to make it work for us in a positive direction.
Yeah. Well, in addition to that, personal and social development, the academic success, student success, there's another issue here, of course, in terms of having a universal pre-K system, and that is the value to parents and guardians. Many struggle, as you know, with childcare issues, and I know that's a really important part of this discussion, that this is needed in that regard as well.
Yeah, so the focus on the child's development is one piece, but the workforce is another piece. So childcare allows people to go to school and to go to work. And it is a necessity. So we need to meet the parents' needs, and the struggles are tremendous. Childcare is actually very expensive. And a lot of people fall through the cracks. Maybe they're not qualifying for Head Start or free pre-K program, or maybe their hours are long and extended, or swing shifts. It's a struggle. Transportation.
I mean, there's so many things, yeah.
Even if parents own vehicles, you have to drop the child off, you have to pick the child up, and you have to make that work with your work schedule.
Yeah.
So there are just many issues around, and the excess. Even if you qualify for an early childhood program like Head Start or pre-K, the waiting list is tremendous. the slots are already filled and you're waiting a year.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move now to your work at John A. Logan College in Carterville and the program there for folks who are interested in working in this field and getting folks the chance to have a good start in life.
Business is blooming at John A. Logan College in the early childhood program, and we have really struggled. So coming out of the COVID was another struggle. But right now, with the support of actually the governor's grant, the ECACE, which stands for the Early Childhood Access Consortium for Equity grant, we have lots of support available to students now to go to school. So this grant has supplied us with early childhood scholarships that students are qualifying for. It has supplied us with support staff that we just now have hired, support staff last semester to really get things rolling. So right now, early childhood people can go to school and have all of their expenses paid for if they are working in a program, because the grant actually targets working students who, you know, they're working at maybe as an assistant teacher. They don't have a finished credential or degree. And so right now is really the time to go to school.
So give us an idea of that. What kind of credentials or licensing requirements are needed for someone that wants to work in early childhood education?
At John A. Logan, we're offering the associate's degree.
Okay.
For a DCFS licensed center-based program. The associate's degree would be needed for the lead teacher and for the center director and beyond, because we're really looking at center directors getting bachelor's degrees now.
I'm guessing some students move on to other institutions like WSIU Carbondale, where we're taping today, for a bachelor's degree. But getting that associate's degree can launch your career in early childhood ed, and that's something that some students do.
Yes, we really encourage that. So just don't stop here. So they can get the associate's degree in early childhood and transfer to SIU or whatever four-year institution they desire, and they need to really keep going. And you asked me about the credentials. It depends on where you work. So with the private Head Start centers, an associate's degree, they can do well in that environment, or they can work as an assistant teacher in a public school. But if they want to teach pre-K in a public school or any of the early childhood classrooms, which pre-K to second grade is an early childhood endorsement with the state, they need a bachelor's degree. The early intervention programs, it depends on where you are working. A lot of times home visitors, they work with an associate's degree or a special credential. Head Start, federal Head Start requires their lead teachers to have a bachelor's degree. So again, it really depends on where you work.
And there's a real need, correct? I mean, we have a lot of job opportunities.
Yes, everywhere. So in after-school programs, youth programs, we have a student who actually is training right now to work in a hospital nursery. So you don't think of, most people think child care center, but I have students who have went through the program. They were affiliated with the Women's Center and actually had a social work background, but they were taking early childhood because they were starting a children's program at the Women's Center. So again, I know that I'm a little winded, but it depends on where you are working.
So tell me about what you enjoy most about working in this field and how you came to early childhood education as a career.
Okay. Initially, I didn't start with early childhood education as a career. When I entered college right out of high school, my goal was to be a child psychologist. And so my first love, and it still is, I love child psychology, I love psychology. And because of an interruption in my plans, a pregnancy actually, and my academic advisor said, I said, well, I need to just graduate and I need to get a job and I need to take care of my baby. And she said, well, you won't get a job in psychology with a bachelor's in psychology. And every time I would take that aptitude test, it would simply put me in social work.
Ah, okay.
And so I went through Child and Family Services. At that point, they had it was a College of Social Work. They had Child and Family Services was a part of their specialization. So you had different specializations, and I did actually try the rehab counseling for a little bit, and substance abuse counseling classes, and just, I was exploring a little bit. I was in and out of school for 7 years, taking a class here and there, and when I went back to finish up, the Child and Family Services program had been taken out of social services and put under the umbrella of education.
Okay.
And the education department split, so they offer, and they still do, a Child and Family Services specialization with the early education program, or you can do preschool primary with the public schools.
Good to
so
know.
They changed me,
Yeah.
and it was a wonderful change.
Well, thank you for sharing that and sharing all of the great news about early childhood education and the work that you do at John A. Logan. It's been great having you here.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you. My guest was Dr. Marilyn Toliver. She is a professor and advisor for the Early Childhood Education program at John A. Logan College. That's Eye on Education for all of us at WSIU. I'm Fred Martino. Thanks for being here, and have a great week.